Environmental Commission. First item will be roll call.
Chair Hall.
Here.
Alderman Crane.
Here.
Commissioner Valdez.
Here.
Commissioner Sharma, present. Commissioner Vice Chair Serafin, absent, I guess. No? I'll just mark absent, or?
Yeah, and then if she arrives, you would note the time.
Okay. And Commissioner Sohesik, is that?
He has not been sworn in yet, so
Okay.
you can just strike his name.
Okay.
Okay, next we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Jesse, if you want to give us a 30-second overview or 3-minute overview.
Sure.
Welcome to the Environmental Commission.
Yeah, so I grew up Franklin from day one. I grew up on 83rd next to Ben Franklin. Graduated Franklin High School 2020. And then in the city itself, I started a landscape company about 4.5 years ago. So live, work in the city, and I just wanted to be a part of something in the city. So that's kind of why I volunteered. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Great to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next citizen comment period, we'll open that at 6:35. And since there's no citizens, we'll close at 6:35. Agenda item 3, approval of minutes from our March 27th meeting.
Move to approve.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item, unfinished business, review of articles for City of Franklin newsletter. I don't think we received any new proposals.
No, we'll have materials for your next agenda to review, but there wasn't anything for this one. The photos, et cetera, have been communicated. The deadline was the 17th for the upcoming newsletter, so it's that stuff about turf grasses versus native plants with a blurb is going to be published. So.
Okay, good.
Nothing to note here.
Right. Discussion only. Item B, update on Environmental Commission participation in the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance Task Force.
Thank you. So.
Let's see, we got a schedule.
At long last, I have an updated schedule. And for a little bit of background, this is the city is updating its design and development ordinance so that all of the standards related to landscaping, to how uses are applied, and also to how the natural resource standards locally are applied are being updated. And we have completed a draft. So there were a series of meetings which the Environmental Commission members, Commissioner Sharma and others, have participated in the past, producing this draft revised ordinance. So that's effectively where we are. This timeline is woefully out of date at this point, but as a general overview of sort of the process itself. So there was a kickoff in 2021, a public engagement process, a diagnosis step, which reviewed the current ordinances that we do development under, evaluating them for areas of weakness, how they create nonconformities, reviewing the map overall, and then probably one of the major things is that there was a significant lack of clarity in the ordinances, in some places where it actually conflicts, just figuring out what's wrong with it. We knew in general there's a problem. This needs to be updated in general, but also has some issues. And so clarifying what are the core issues to be resolved. Then we undertook this draft process, which basically concluded at the end of last summer. There was a session with this commission and J.B. Hines, who is one of the consultants that's working on this project through, it's Houseil Levine and Birchline are the consultants that are assisting the planning department with the development of this new code. Ms. Hines' expertise is in natural resource management, stormwater, et cetera. And so there was a specific session with this commission to review that element of the code because you are responsible for enforcing it when impacts are requested above and beyond what's allowed. So that process occurred last year. I should have made a better list of dates, but we're just going to wing it. And so the draft is now complete based on the feedback from this commission and from the UDO task force overall, which consists of the Plan Commission, members of this commission, members of the Economic Development Commission. There's a number of others. So that's where we have arrived at in terms of the previously proposed process. We got stuck there for a little while due to turnover in my department and the planning department, and due to turnover in the city overall. And as we were looking at how to restart the process and keep moving ahead with the project, there's also been a request to address issues of noise and how that's being handled in the design ordinance. So that's been added to the scope of work, and a draft noise ordinance is currently being produced. So that's part of this process now, in addition to the development standards. So we'll be reviewing the draft and finalizing it so that feedback has been incorporated except for on the noise standards. And then coming to a final document that is then going to go through an adoption process. There will be public input. Part of the expanded scope of this was additional public input. And so from that point where the arrow is, these are some of the new things that we're doing. The draft UDO, an initial draft of the ordinance. We're already behind schedule from the new schedule, but just in general, an idea of how we're going to be doing this. There's already been a staff working session to just kind of craft a timeline and work through some of the administrative processes that need to be done. Revised draft noise ordinance is forthcoming. I'll show you the schedule of proposed meetings in a second, but that is something there'll be 4 meetings. There's going to be additional focus group sessions and staff working sessions. This mitigation guide was something that was outside of the original scope of the project originally, but due to some of the feedback from this commission and some of the feedback from staff and the overall need for clarification about what's expected and required when we require mitigation here in the city in terms of if you're impacting natural resources, what do we expect? So that has been added and will require your feedback. And then there's a series of public engagement pieces. So an informational brochure, what's called a story map. It will be a website with a map of the city that explains what's changing in terms of how this ordinance is organized and what parcels that affects. And it'll give you an opportunity to kind of see it all as one thing. The maps that you've been exposed to are kind of standalone, and GIS now has the ability to kind of integrate that into a narrative.
Yes.
Yeah, they're really cool, and they're great explanatory tools. Some pop-up engagement. So one of the things that we requested is like an engagement package, that brochure. So staff will be doing that, and there'll also be other bigger sessions. Working sessions and task force meetings. And then a public open house, the final UDO, and then we get into the legal review and adoption process. So the legislative process of actually taking this on. So we hope that by the time we arrive at this, everyone has had a good look at the ordinance, feels that the process has been sufficiently public, and has an understanding of what's actually changing, so that we can move through the legislative process. So some of how this affects you, the commission members that are part of the UDO task force are invited and expected to participate in the task force. There will be feedback requested from you for that new mitigation guide and comment, and probably a request that you make a recommendation about it. So take a decision about what you think of it. My hope is that it will be something you approve of. And then, so there'll be a process for the commission as a whole and for those individual members. And then the meeting dates are these. So May 23rd, they're always prior to Plan Commission, and Plan Commission did decide to have them start at 5 p.m. Because that way it doesn't conflict with the actual agenda of Plan Commission. We've had a few situations where the time has been, the consultant's time has been, they've gotten stuck behind other items and had to wait. So out of respect for their time, and also just to kind of control the amount of time that's being spent on this, have a clear agenda, we're starting it at 5 with the stopping point of 6 at the start of Plan Commission. So May 23rd will be the overall introduction to the proposed draft. So that document that you had previously reviewed now has a draft that's incorporated the feedback from all of the different outlets, and it'll be an introduction and a reintroduction to the project. June 20th will be natural resource protection and noise regulations. August 8th will be the zoning map, reviewing. So overall, some of what this does, zoning regulates the dimensional standards of a site and also the uses of a site. So what you can do with a property and where you can put things. Some of that is not changing substantively, but being consolidated into districts and those kinds of things. So we'll go over that process, what is and is not changing in terms of the zoning map. So there are no cases where someone will be like, I have a house here and now you have to put a business. That's not happening. But just to go through that process and say there are going to be consolidations and changes, and then the overall text of the ordinance is changing. So instead of saying it's a RC1 or whatever district, there will be a different name, and some of those names are grouped under one name now. And then the administrative standards and procedures, and actually this, although it sounds quite boring, if you're not a bureaucrat, the administrative standards and procedures is actually significant in that it's a discussion of how these regulations and standards are applied, what commissions they go to, what the application process looks like, et cetera. So this affects you guys because the natural resource special exception process is a type of variance. And so you're explicitly assigned that responsibility of being the first reviewer of that variance type under the current ordinances and presumably under the ordinances going forward. So just be aware that it affects you as well. So subject to change if we get delayed again. I mean, this process has taken significantly longer than we originally anticipated, but is proceeding finally. So, but for now, we know that on May 23rd, that reintroduction will happen. And again, there's the UDO task force members that are, of course, invited and expected to come, but then the commission as a whole can come. And if you have input, that kind of thing, we'll put a bad key notice on the agenda so that if all of you are there, which it should be interesting if you're into that kind of thing, which I presume you are since you're here today. So, are there any questions?
For me, thank you
So
for
the
that.
noise regulations will be added to the draft, and
Correct.
that will be discussed on June 20th. Is that when?
Correct. So there is, the overall draft is complete, except for we're going to be revisiting the natural resource protection item and then the new noise regulations. So then that'll be added to the draft. So, but they're currently drafting it.
And that's where the commission will be more involved. Okay.
Yep. So we haven't scheduled feedback specifically from you, but I expect that this will be on one of your regular agendas going forward. And there'll be materials for you to review. And then if you want to look at the overall draft ordinance, the task force members will be receiving that as part of your packet for this. But if the rest of the commission is interested, it's a public document, and I'm happy to share it as well. But be aware, like, you're going to get an electronic document because it's
Yeah,
hundreds of pages. So
that's fine.
So I'm thinking we need that
I can have that available for you. Yeah. So the packet for that will be distributed, and I did not include this information in my slides, but let me just look at a calendar. As part of the Plan Commission packet, I believe. So, yeah, that's usually just, well, I'll have to double check on when it's going out because we wanted to give people additional time to review. But when it is available and distributed, I can just forward it to the group. So I'll do that.
So you're anticipating that to happen
In the first couple of weeks of May. So
Is there any action here?
No, just discussion only. All right, moving on to new business. Item A, Environmental Commission will be participating in the Arbor Day event scheduled for May 4th, 10 a.m. at the Franklin Public Library.
Excited.
We will have trees and shrubs that we're giving away to the public. So Jesse, if you're available that day, hopefully you can make it.
What time again? Let me put it in my calendar.
It's a Saturday, and it starts at 10 a.m. People are lining up sometimes
Okay.
9:30, 9:45. Last year it wasn't too big of a rush.
Because it rained last year.
Yeah, that might have kept people away. But I also heard back from Pat at Wild Ones, which is a group that focuses on natives. She and or her designees will be attending, and then also Linda Frank from Milwaukee Area Land Conservancy is planning to attend. So they'll be handing out information, or at least talking about their connections with Franklin and native. And I heard from Pat Pomahak, who used to be a commission member. She's planning, weather permitting, to do garden cleanup that day at the library. There's a rain garden on the west side of the library. So to the extent any of us are available to help, she would appreciate that. And I think that's all I have to say about Arbor Day. Anybody else has questions, comments?
So a fantastic event last year. I'm hoping for the same level of involvement. Seeing the Girl Scouts do the cleanup in Lion Legend Park as well, I think was fantastic. And just seeing the community just kind of being part of it and not just, hey, I'm here for something free, and then they just break out. It's people are involved beyond just whatever is available.
Yeah. There seems to be a large turnout of folks looking to clean up the areas or their neighborhood and letting DPW know, and they'll pick up the bags of whatever you collect. So, yeah, I think it's a good event.
City forester will be available, I think.
I
right?
believe Tom, yes, he should be there. He's bringing the shrubs and trees.
Yeah, to explain which one is which.
Right, yeah.
How to take care of them.
Okay.
Discussion only as well.
Item B, creation of a combined Parks and Environmental Commission.
I do not have an update on that. I will let the commission know right now. The Parks Commission has a number of items that I'm kind of working through in terms of some administrative projects that have a budget timeline that I'm under, so I probably won't get to that until the end of summer. So we can continue to keep it on the agenda or not as you prefer, but it is not going away as a goal for this year. It's just I haven't been able to work on it. So
You sound busy.
And then item C, discussion of natural areas and mowing information, recommendations to forward to Parks Commission.
Yep. So I sent the item that you had requested to them. I didn't include it in your packet again since many times, but I can share it with you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Which was the commission made a set of recommendations regarding mowing best practices for natural areas. The city actually has a significant parks. The city has a lot of parks. Some of them have natural areas in them, and they have been managed in varying ways. There isn't a consistent set of practices. And so the commission made recommendations about mowing practices. So that memo went to them, to the Parks Commission, and they were receptive to it. So part of the discussion was about, you may be aware that Water Tower Park is a new park that's currently being developed. So there's a conceptual site plan for it, which, have I shown it to you? Okay. Let me make a note for myself. It's not. So the Parks Commission has gone through a conceptual design process. And right now it was just a question of like what level of intensity is the park going to be and what are the basic facilities that they want to have. However, the central part of the park is a wetland. There's one wetland that's in excellent condition and another wetland on site that's very compromised. And so part of the design of the park will include restoration of those natural resource features. So the city engineer found that information that you had was useful in that context because that's part of how this park will be managed. As an example, another park going forward that the city purchased was the Southwest Park. So we're nowhere near a design step for that at all. But as the design process starts, there will be natural areas in the park, and that would be applicable there as well. So. Yeah, they were like, cool, thanks. They didn't have a lot of questions, though. So, and I was not personally at the meeting. I was looking at the sun. So.
That's the appropriate.
Yes. But yeah, so. Also in your packet was materials related to the weed ordinances that were a request from the commission. So they are part of the municipal code. And for now, it was just here's everything communication to you. I pulled out all of the relevant pieces of text that are related to, it's under nuisances. There are specific species of plants that are called out and things related to height and the timing of mowing and that kind of thing. So for now, it's for you to evaluate, and then if you have feedback or want to take some action on it, that's certainly up for discussion. But I didn't produce any commentary on it because I wasn't sure what direction you wanted to take it. So.
Yeah, I think the question at the last meeting was, well, what is the verbiage and specifically, is there any height
Yes.
requirements, which I did see 18 inches or 6 inches.
Yep.
If they're noxious weed. But it doesn't say turf grass. So. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any comments at this point or things to discuss.
Can I get a summary of what this is and what the goal is while I read through this?
Yeah, so this commission has been discussing the sort of long history of it is that there was a request by the community to consider no mow May in Franklin, and the Common Council referred that request to Environmental Commission to determine whether it was really appropriate for Franklin, what it would entail, et cetera. This commission did a pretty extensive review of literature and had a discussion about it over the course of basically a year, and recommended that the city not adopt no mow May, but instead pursue options to improve management of public lands and improve plantings on private lands through the use of native species.
Yeah.
And so this is, the weed ordinance was actually, when no mow May was being proposed, it was asking to suspend some portions of this ordinance. The ordinance also has in it specific species of plants and trees, and since you own a landscaping company, you probably know that, that are prohibited.
Yep.
Regardless of whether or not they're native species, there are some plants that are considered noxious weeds and are required to be removed,
Yep.
Subnoxious weeds that are not required to be removed but are not allowed.
Sure.
And then the enforcement process for that.
Okay.
So, as we're looking ahead at landscaping standards in the city and also how private property gets enforced, so there's a weed commissioner too.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
a
ready
person
for that
that,
now. Yeah,
yeah.
sounds like a fun job.
People have fun stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this right now, it's just informational.
Okay.
Commissioner Serafim and the commission requested the information to kind of wrap their heads around what is the text of the ordinance. This is in the municipal code,
Mhm.
so all of that is available online, and
Got
I can send out a link to it as well. But yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we can keep this on and have potential further discussion
I
at an
suspect,
upcoming meeting.
yeah, Commissioner Serafim will almost certainly have feedback.
Right.
So.
Well, she'll be back in June. She won't be here for May.
Correct.
Which brings us to our next topic. May 22nd is our next scheduled meeting. Yeah, Amy already informed us that she will not be in attendance. Is everyone else okay with that date?
Yeah.
Or do we want to look at moving?
That works for me.
No, it's rad. Day 3.
So, May 22nd looks good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any other?
Are there any agenda items besides what's currently here that they need to find information for, or?
If there's no new business, then should we then move to June then, or?
For the,
In the,
skip the 22nd,
yeah,
May 22nd? That's an option too. You've been contemplating, or not contemplating, but an NRSE.
That NRSC is currently on like indefinite hold. It changes from week to week. So, whenever you next meet, though, I will be doing a review of the current ordinances for everyone's benefit, including the new people, of what it is you were reviewing for, either before whatever natural resource special exception is on the agenda, or in the absence of one, just an overview. So it might be helpful to just do that, but I believe Commissioner Serafim's had that training.
yeah,
So
I'm okay. Can keep it.
Yeah, that would be good to know. Did she go through that, or would she want a refresher? You want a refresher? But, yeah, I don't know. Others, thoughts? Skip the May meeting?
Maybe third meeting in a row for me because I got school board the Monday, common council Tuesday, and then that will be following that. So
You're in meeting mode.
yeah, and then Plan Commission on Thursday is that May 22nd, 23rd.
23rd. Yep.
So
I would maybe say that it would be probably prudent to not have that because a lot of this will be kind of hingent on what comes out of Plan Commission, and where I think that looking at forward steps when other bodies need to make steps on their own, I don't know if that would be the most prudent use of our time.
Although, did we need to have comments for the June 20th meeting on the natural resource protection and noise regulations? I guess that was the only, if we needed to review and discuss, we needed to do that.
Let me check with the consultants if they would have materials ready. I don't think the draft noise ordinance would be ready at that point. But I will check with them if there's anything they feel you should review prior to June 20th, because your next meeting that's before your June meeting. Yeah.
26.
I can check with them, and then if you want to cancel contingent on that, that's up to you.
Okay. Put in your calendars in pencil, it may be erased. And then the next one would be June 26th. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.